share with you this morning. Have you ever wondered, how does a preacher decide what message to bring this week? So some of us know that we often use a lectionary, the scriptures over the course of the year, and that is a very good discipline for preaching from the whole Bible. Sometimes we use the church year itself. So this is the 6th Sunday of Easter. We're about to go into Ascension Sunday and Pentecost, so that's where we are in the church year. Sometimes there's a sermon series like we had this past month with Mike, and that shapes the message over a number of weeks. And then sometimes, like today, you're the guest preacher on a Sunday that's in between. And this is also a Sunday where Claire's returning to us, and the Sunday that we begin our journey with her in transition. This Sunday, as we know and celebrate, is United Women of Faith Sunday. This Sunday, we may know that significant changes have been made at General Conference for the United Methodist Church. This Sunday is Communion Sunday. So, what then shall I share? Well, I am learning to keep my eyes open, my ears, and all of my senses open and present to what the Spirit is calling me to pay attention to. What message am I particularly called to share with my particular church on this particular Sunday? So, last week, as I began to mull all that together and intentionally spend time listening to the Spirit to prepare for today, here are some of the things I was thinking about. So first of all, it is my calling as a deacon to witness to and invite our community to re-engage with God's first book of Revelation, creation. Many of you have asked me questions about that. All of last week, as I read Richard Rohr each morning in my morning quiet time, every single message last week was about listening to creation. I was preparing to lead a Creation Day experience last Sunday with Elon United Methodist Church. Their children and families came to the farm to learn about creation and experience creation. And since we had baby chicks on the farm, our theme was, God is a Mother Hen, which you just heard about a little. And then, of course, that Mother of Faith Sunday, the thought kept thinking about women and their service and their ministries and their witness to the incredible gifts and callings that God gives them and gives women. The biblical story would simply not exist without the participation of women in God's work, many of whom go unnamed or denigrated. And our understanding of God would not be full without all of the feminine images of God in the Bible. So I'm mulling all of this over, and last Wednesday morning, the 80 baby chicks arrived at the farm. Now, they come in the mail from a hatchery, so there's no mother hen on the farm to care for them. So Nix is my granddaughter, and she and I carefully prepared the brooder, soft pine shavings, heat lamps, food, and water, and then we gently lifted each baby chick out of the box and gave her first sip of life-giving water. We blessed the chicks, closed the brooder door, and went off on to the other farm chores and activities. Now, Farmer John was nearby washing the vegetables with Kit, our son's partner, and they could hear all those chicks happily cheeping in their new home. But Kit noticed that one chick seemed to be cheeping very loudly, as if in distress. Now, it may be hard to notice one crying chick over the cheeping of 79 others. But Kit's heart is especially attuned to nature and to God's creatures. So they stopped their work and went to the brooder. They found one little 2-day-old chick huddled by itself and crying miserably. So Farmer John picked her up, placed her under the heat lamp with all the other chicks, and she immediately stopped crying. God is a mother hen. God hears the one crying and goes to her aid. And for that moment, Farmer John was a mother hen. And in their many acts of service to our neighbors who are crying out in need, the United Women of Faith and these people that we just recognized are joining God as a mother hen to the world. Now, there are many biblical images for God, and we don't use them as often as Father or Lord or Savior. We get kind of stuck in a rut, and we miss out on so many of the rich images of God to expand our understanding. Let me tell you a few of those. In the book of Hosea, it says that God is a mother bear, and that God is a young lion. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says, like an eagle protecting its nest, hovering over its young, God spread out God's wings, took hold of Israel, carried Israel on God's back. Of all the prophets, Isaiah seems to be the fondest in painting God as an actual human mother. Here's some of the verses from Isaiah. In 42:14 it says, "For a long time I, God, have kept silent. I've been quiet and held myself back, but now, like a woman in childbirth, I cry out, I gasp and I pant." In Isaiah 66:13 it says, "As a mother comforts her child, so will I, God, comfort you, and you will be comforted, Jerusalem." In Isaiah 49:15 it says, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has born? Though she may forget, I, God, will not forget you." In the Psalms that we read this morning, and in many of the Psalms, creation is so often an active participant with us in praise and faith and worship. The Hebrew word for spirit is ruach, to hover. Now the word ruach is a feminine word in Hebrew, and the connotation is that of a mother bird. It's used also in Genesis 1:30, the Spirit of God, the ruach, was hovering over the face of the waters. In the book of Proverbs, wisdom, or Sophia, was present at the creation of the world. The word, or logos in Greek, and Sophia in Latin are used interchangeably by early Orthodox theologians, even specifically identifying Christ as Sophia in some cases. We can be so steeped in our common or favorite images of God that we're limited in our understanding of God, which then limits our relationship with God and with each other. I remember I was doing a children's message with Haitian and Hispanic children in South Florida. I asked them, "What does Jesus look like?" They all described to me that picture from Sunday school rooms of old of a mild white man with long brown hair and soft hands. You know that picture. I know you do. When I showed them images, though, of what Jesus more likely looked like as a first-century Jewish laborer, and then I showed them other pictures from artistic images depicting Jesus universally in many cultures, they were astounded. And it helped them open up and begin to see a broader image of their God and to see themselves as represented in the biblical story. So one of the ways that I engage people in connecting with God through creation is through what's called forest bathing experiences. I offer these mindful walks in nature which open all of our senses to what God, through creation, may have to share with us. They're not nature education walks, and they're not even specifically religious. They're a time of being present and noticing what nature has to say to us, and they can't help but be spiritual as we slow down and listen and connect with creation and our Creator. So I offer these forest bathing experiences on our farm every month, but I love also sharing them with the first-year Duke Divinity students each fall as they're beginning their school year and their seminary experience. One year, as I gathered the group of students, a student proclaimed to the group, "I don't do nature." We're beginning to do a whole period of time in nature, and I stumbled over my response, but later I realized what I really wanted to say is that as students being trained to be pastors and Christian leaders, as theologians and us as Christians, we can't say, "I don't do nature." Since creation is the first book of God's revelation, that would be like saying, "I don't do the Old Testament," or "I don't do the New Testament." That would be really crazy, huh? So we simply are not able to understand God and have a deep relationship with God without the whole story, told through creation, through the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the ongoing revelation of the Spirit. Another time, a student shared that he was nature adverse, but he was going to be brave and take part in this experience. His wife was surprised he had chosen the forest bathing experience since he's uncomfortable outside with insects and dirt and critters. He, though, was intrigued to expand his understanding and experience of God through creation. And so we started to participate in these experiences and activities, and then we all laughed later as we gathered after being silently out near the lake and in creation, and then we came back together again and shared, and he said, "I almost jumped out of my skin when a huge sea creature crashed into the water." Have you ever seen the turtles on the logs? Yes. He also shared, though, that by the end of this 2-hour experience in creation, he felt closer to God and more open, at peace, and inspired than he had in a long time. We also remember that after Jesus was baptized by John in the river and before he began his 3 years of ministry, the first thing Jesus does is go on retreat in the wilderness for more than a month. We know that here is where he faced the temptations, but that wasn't all that happened in those 40 days. What was he doing? Jesus was connecting with creation and listening to God. He was observing what was going around him in the natural world and preparing, contemplating, beginning to be ready for that ministry. The reason that we know this is because when he comes back, he talks about creation all the time for the rest of his life. He talks about flowers and birds and lambs and trees and vines and seeds and crops and the earth and the soil. He could have talked about all kinds of things. He could have talked about the Roman chariots and their power, the aqueducts and ingenuity involved, but that's not what we have a record of. What we have a record of is someone attuned to the messages of creation. Jesus teaches us by his example over and over again to retreat to the wilderness, or to the garden, or to that potted plant on your porch. And he teaches us to listen to the Spirit with and through creation. Jesus teaches us that contemplation with the natural world must come before action. The more we cultivate intimacy with the natural world, the more we discover about God's presence and the more we're prepared to follow and serve. Now, our modern lives tend to be very domesticated. We have artificial lights. We have heating and air conditioning. We buy food at the grocery store or the restaurant. We can travel wherever we want to go. These are great. We want to be grateful for those things. But we might reflect also that these things can insulate us from creation and from the impact that this has on us. Our lives are domesticated in other ways too. We often live our lives to please others or to live up to their expectations. We fall into the cultural trap of determining our value by what we do or produce. But sometimes, at the birth of a child perhaps, at midlife, facing retirement, or in a life-changing crisis, we may reevaluate our priorities and how we want to spend the precious gift of time each of us has been given. Nature, creation, has a way of reminding us of some of the deeper longings of our heart that have nothing to do with status or wealth, and everything to do with exploring the wild edges of our being and of the divine. Our images of God have also become domesticated and limited, and spending time in creation can remind us of the wild God who breathes new life into us and disrupts our plans. Thomas Berry writes, "First, we must understand that the universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects." Together. This implies that we recover our primordial intimacy with the entire natural world. We belong here. The God-breathed wild instinct that earth and her creatures reveal to us so freely reminds us of our own instinctual being, that part of ourselves where we feel most alive, most creative, and most free. A revolution of love, a renewal of our primordial intimacy with the world, a reclamation of our inner wildness. These are the holy directions we are being called in. Directions that we can't think our way into, but can only move toward as we yield to the longings of the heart. John Philip Newell describes this human awakening that's going on, this awakening to Earth's intimacy with us, as a new Pentecost. This new Pentecost is one that's happening all around us in every moment. There is a continual emergence through the inspiration of the Spirit as we recognize our unity with creation. We are coming to know that we are not separate from creation, that instead we too are earthed and wild. We are discovering that Earth has everything to teach us about the spiritual journey. It's all there already for us, a gift from our Creator who's still speaking through creation every day. We simply need to enter into communion with it.